Welcome back. So, former President Jacob Zuma yesterday said he will not cooperate with the State Capture Commission of Inquiry and says he is prepared to face imprisonment to defend his constitutional rights. This following last week's Constitutional Court order compelling him to appear. Now, the former president has accused the Constitutional Court of becoming politicised, saying it's being used to victimise him. He's also compared the Apex Court to the apartheid regime. Wendel Bloem, a director at Mkhabela Huntley Attorneys, joins us now to discuss this issue. Good to have you. Thanks very, very much, Wendel, for being with us.
Good morning, Len, and thanks for having me.
All right. So, I mean, the reality is that the former president is now defying the highest court in the country. In your view, do you think that Zuma's defiance of the Constitutional Court ruling is misguided and is possibly setting a rather dangerous precedent?
I agree with you 100%, and just so that we have understanding of what that means. In terms of the Constitution, Section 84(2)(f) of the Constitution gives the power to the President to appoint a Commission of Inquiry, which he has. Section 2 of the Constitution indicates that the Constitution is the supreme law of the land. Section 1673 of the Constitution indicates that the ConCourt is the highest court in the land, and similarly Section 1655 of the Constitution says it makes all court orders binding. Now, if you take a consideration of the regulatory environment, it gives us a clear indication that the Constitution and the Constitutional Court is the highest law and highest court in the land, and not only are its orders binding, but all orders by any court are binding, and any attempt by any person, let alone the president, to act in defiance of it sets a bad precedent and is against the law.
The reasoning given, and we'll read what the former president has said. My constitutional rights rendering me completely defenseless against the commission have been suspended and now heralds an imminent constitutional crisis in this country. Does he have a point here when in his letter out to why he is not going to appear when he says this? Let's read between the lines here. What does this actually mean?
I think, in my view, one must go above what Jacob Zuma is alleging. We need to go back to what the order says. The order says that, in a nutshell, that Jacob Zuma must obey all summonses and directions lawfully issued by the Commission. He is directed to appear and give evidence on dates determined by it, and he does not have the right to remain silent. Now, Jacob Zuma's subjective view as to what he thinks the purpose and the ambit of the Constitutional Court is at this point is completely irrelevant, because the Constitutional Court, being the highest court in the land, there is no appeal procedure from the Constitutional Court, meaning you can't appeal a decision, no matter how disgruntled you are, no matter how much reasoning you give for your disgruntlement with any order of the Constitutional Court. I'm sure many people have a lot of dissatisfaction with what the Constitutional Court might have found in their instance. But if you was to ask me, is there anything that we can read between this? I say let's go above this letter. This letter suggests conduct that is unlawful, and no matter what he suggests the Constitutional Court to be, no matter what link he suggests with he has with the presiding officer of the Commission. The fact of the matter is, if he's going to choose to defy the order of the Constitutional Court, he'll be in defiance of a court order, so he'll be in contempt of court. And Section 6 of the Commissions Act of 1947 says that any offence by a witness will render him liable, will make him guilty of an offence and liable for a conviction of 6 months or a fine or both. So, regardless of what he submits as his reasons, Lan, I'll put it in this manner. It's completely irrelevant what his subjective views are of the decision. If he chooses to be in defiance of the court order, he must face the full might of the law, and he'll be in contempt of court, and he'll have to face the sanction that follows.
All right. So that's, I mean, that was the answer to my question was, you know, what would be the consequences? So that's what the law says. But is the former president, in fact, exercising his constitutional right of presumption of innocence by not cooperating with the Zondo Commission? I mean, as it is, it's not a criminal court upon what original basis was or is the former president to appear.
Well, the order, I think, takes care of all of this because it says he's provided with all the protections that the Commissions Act provides witnesses for. And it includes a right not to incriminate himself. So he is sufficiently insulated by this particular court order that protects his rights as a witness and that also directs him to not just simply arrive at the Commission when he does, but to answer questions. And he has no right to remain silent. But against that backdrop, his constitutional rights and his rights as a witness are protected by the Commissions Act of 1947 and are also protected by the court order. So he has no leg to stand on if he was to propose that there is any infringement of any rights. Remember, what he's being called to testify on, he hasn't yet testified on. So there's nothing that he's already been implicated on in terms of any evidence that he's meant to lead. He's already by presumption assuming that his rights will be trampled on. So the entire content of the letter is just completely baseless in terms of his duties that he has now been imposed on in terms of a court order.
I mean, if we look at the other issue that's being spoken about is the president in a rather scathing letter, I think aimed at Justice Jafta, and saying that what is happening is that the highest court in the land is being politicized. This is a very, very, very severe accusation leveled against the Constitutional Court, given that he says he is being singled out and treated differently by the judicial system. Let's focus on this for a little bit. It's a big claim, and we can obviously look at it in different ways. But how do you look at this particular claim?
Any claim that suggests that the Constitutional Court is either has been politicized, has become a kangaroo court, or has become a circus is all baseless. And why I say this, Leanne, is because we have to view this from the perspective of the fact that, A, here's a court order by the highest court in the land, and that order gives specific directions as to what he must do. We have now discussed what is the implications if he does not comply with that. So, underneath that, any allegations, whether the Constitutional Court is a circus, as I've indicated, is a propaganda machine for the media, or whatever allegation I want to add to it, you want to add to it, Jacob Zuma wants to add to it, it is all irrelevant. That entire letter, upon reading it, is completely irrelevant. He goes into some history that he suggests that he has with the chairperson, his family being targeted, bank accounts being frozen. Against all of these things, there's this huge campaign against the Zuma family and against himself. And that, all of it is completely, it might be a serious charge and a serious allegation to say that the Constitutional Court has become politicized. The fact of the matter is, he has a court order, and if he's not going to comply with it, he'll be in contempt of court, and he'll be liable for the sanctions in terms of criminal procedures. So it's completely irrelevant what his personal subjective view is of the Constitutional Court.
Yeah, you know, he has also made claims and spoken to the fact that, and again I'm quoting from it, saying that the country's judiciary had thrown out the rule of fairness and made rulings that were solely aimed at humiliating him. He's accused Justice Raymond Zondo of this. He accused, obviously, him, saying he's following in the footsteps of the former public protector, Thuli Madonsela, and that they have a very different approach, specifically dealing with him. You know, have you noted that? I mean, have you seen that there is a different treatment towards others as opposed to former President Jacob Zuma?
In my view, that allegation itself is also completely baseless. I think the Zuma and his camp are convinced that there's obviously some ploy against him. Even that allegation, Leanne, let's assume this matter is in a lower court, for example, the Supreme Court of Appeal, and the decision appears in the manner that it does. I mean, he has a right to appeal to the Constitutional Court and express all his disgruntlement. Where he is at the point where no matter how he feels about the judgment, his subjective views, that he feels that it's a conspiracy directed at him. By the way, it's a constitution that he set up himself. If he feels has all these subjective feelings, let's separate what the law says, what the court order says, and what the sanction is for contempt of it from subjective feelings of an individual. What Jacob Zuma is drawing us, in my view, is his subjective views on what he feels a court order means to him. And every single day, people step out of these courts and have orders against him, and they have all manner of views. I've dealt with clients that feel all manner of ways about court orders, and if there's a right to appeal, we'll appeal. But your subjective views cannot trump, cannot overstep or trump above what the law says and the highest court in the land. So he's entitled to his subjective views, but if he does not comply with the court order, then he will face sanction, regardless of those views.
Deputy Chief Justice Zondo laid criminal charges against Zuma in 2020, we remember, for leaving the commission without permission. If this had been someone else, what would have happened to them? I mean, would they have been given a warning or been arrested? Do you think Zuma should have been arrested then for his behaviour?
Well, the Act says, as I've indicated earlier, any of these kind of forms of conduct, you'll be, if you are found guilty of an offence, you will be liable on conviction of imprisonment of 6 months or a fine. I do not quite know where, after the laying of that charge, procedurally, where that matter resides, that particular contempt. And I do not believe that any other witness that appeared before the Zondo Commission that would have subjected themselves to the same conduct would have been treated in any different manner. The Act is clear. If you are in breach as a witness, there's a sanction that you must face. But before you can face that sanction, a criminal procedure must take its course. Where that criminal procedure is at the moment, we haven't, as far as I know, been notified either by the Commission or by the NPA as to how far those proceedings are, because those proceedings are ongoing. If he defies this particular court order, there'll be proceedings with regards to that defiance, and his response is basically bring it on. So the NPA must bring it on.
Yeah, I mean, are we getting caught up in all of this toing and froing rather than looking at the key issues? And do you think this was the defence strategy right from the beginning?
No, of course, I do believe that there appears to be a strategy to try and delay whatever proceedings are brought against the former president as much as possible. It just gives that impression. I could be wrong, but to answer your question more pertinently, what we are being drawn in here is the subjective view of an individual who happens to be the former president. He's expressed it, and we've taken note of what he says. But what supersedes all of that is what the Constitution says. It is what the Constitutional Court stands for. It is the Constitutional Court order. And in that instance, Jacob Zuma won't be treated any differently from any constitutional delinquent who decides to defy the order of that court or any court, and he will have to face sanctions. So I'm saying we need to differentiate between a 6-page letter of a prominent figure who expresses his personal views about a court and its order against what supersedes all of that and what makes all of that irrelevant, which is a court order and a court of the highest, the highest court in the land.
Yeah. Just finally, quickly, Wendel, we need to wrap this. I mean, as unlikely as it seems, if Zuma were in fact to tell all at the Commission, how many senior ANC officials do you think he would be taking down with him? I mean, in other words, how much vested interest may there be for Zuma simply not to be charged or not to be contravening any ruling?
I think my view has always been about that question and he's threatened it many times, that if he goes down, he's just going to spill the beans on everyone else. And if one looks at the political landscape since Polokwane, in particular, when he became a president of the ANC, and from that period going forward, it appears to me that should Jacob Zuma himself, just on the face of it, face any form of sanction, he's not the only one that will face it. There will be a whole myriad of people that join him in orange.
Leave it there for this morning. Wendel Bloem, thanks for talking to us about the possible repercussions that former President Jacob Zuma is facing for defying the Constitutional Court's ruling that he should appear before the Zondo Commission. Right, I think we've got 2 minutes to have a look at trending topics.